Thank you for that introduction. Thank you all for having us, for inviting Libertank as a speaker to the conference. It is very touching to see this happening here in my hometown, in Medellin, and do feel welcome. All right? Thanks a lot. I'm pretty nervous right now, and putting it into words helps me to calm those nerves, all right? But enough about that. Also, I'm going to be a bit old-fashioned. I'm going to read a little something I wrote. I promise you I won't take 45 minutes of your time. I hope we can have a discussion, a conversation, more than just me saying stuff to you. So anyway, thank you for being here. Thank you to the organizers for having us here and for hosting the conference, the World Conference in this beautiful city. I know it has been tough, especially in these pandemic times, but well, we're here finally after all. So this country, Colombia, in spite of itself and various other threats, has remained open for business during these extraordinary times. This region, Antioquia, and this city, Medellin specifically, still stand out as bastions of liberty and free trade in Latin America, where populist rhetoric, as you all know, has clouded the mind of politicians, government, and most importantly, individuals. In general terms, though, the correct mindset, or at least the minimum cultural values that allow for the entrepreneurial spirit to flourish into tangible development and to tangible wealth, are still in place in people's minds here in Antioquia. If such weren't the case, perhaps, the conference wouldn't be held here in this city. Am I right? However, these values are being eroded by the persistent, consistent, and very, very disciplined efforts of those we may define very broadly as enemies of liberty. The pattern of strategies and activities sort of repeats itself once more, as it has in other parts of the world, during other times. These people have taken over most of the judicial system. And a quick reminder that judges are not elected officials and are therefore not subject to the democratic scrutiny of the people, of us, of citizens. They have also taken over most of the mainstream media outlets. You know what I'm talking about: newspapers, TV channels, radio stations, magazines, and social media. Furthermore, they have snatched the educational system from the liberty-minded in its entirety. Academic curriculums, all the way from kindergarten to universities, have been redesigned to convince our youth that businesses are responsible for poverty, hunger, disease, and any kind of social problem we have faced in the past and are currently facing today. None of this is new to you. None of this is new to us either, unfortunately. I know. So how did this come to be? Perhaps we gave freedom for granted in Colombia as well as in other parts. Maybe we became unaware and we became comfortable with all the freedom we've enjoyed here historically. Or maybe we thought liberty had already been conquered for good, and we came to the dangerous understanding that history is an inevitable spiral towards an ever-increasing state of well-being. Well, that's all wrong, of course. So I don't know for sure how did this come to be. Also, I think it's pretty useless to point fingers right now or to look for someone to blame at this point. All we can do is work with what we have and try to move forward. This conference, the fact that you're here this week, the fact that we had a wonderful week at the Liberty Camp up till yesterday, shows that things are being done and measures are being taken. Anyway, the realization of all this brought together a small group of odd, stubborn fellows, some of them here present, who wanted to make a stand for those values, those principles which are being increasingly eroded by this populist rhetoric. This group of individuals knew from the start that more legislation or regulation was more part of the problem than part of the solution. Again, nothing new, right? This group of people also knew that party politics and electoral assembly lines are not the best way to protect freedom. In many cases, there are ways to erode freedom, to snatch it away from our hands. So these people knew that meaningful impact could only come from private, bottom-up grassroots action, as we have heard here in the previous presentations. And thus Libertank was born in 2019, very recently. It's the think tank and action tank I am part of today, and the institution I am representing here today. Libertank's task is to promote economic liberty, property rights, and free enterprise as true sources of opportunity and development in the simplest possible terms. Our job is to spread the good word of economic freedom, of private initiative, by convincing Colombians that the future, that the power to shape the future, lies within them, and not within the power, within the hands or within the power of political elites or bureaucrats. So this is what we do very basically, and the title of my presentation is the same as one of the main topics of this conference: market alternatives to current challenges in Colombia. So what I want to try to say is that the reason why I'm bragging a little bit about Libertank and what we have done so far is because, along with the possibility to do business, to close a deal, to earn some money, the concept behind Libertank seems to be the market alternative to government-sourced solutions to current challenges. Now, please don't get me wrong, I'm not saying Libertank is the only solution, of course not, but it is the concept behind Libertank. To convince people, common Colombians in our case, who probably didn't finish high school, who very probably did not go to college or university, that economic matters, taxes, legislation, property rights affects them. That a 1% increase in a tax, in an added value tax, 1 cent increase in the bus or metro ticket affects them and affects them deeply. So, given the fact that ideas actually matter and that they are the drivers of history, we have come to understand that Colombia needs 100 more think tanks. So a huge shout out to ICP, Instituto de Ciencia Política, here present, to FENALCO, for instance, or other, like our brothers and sister institutions in the fight for liberty here in Colombia. So Colombia also needs a ton more of investment, business ideas, of course, and free exchange of goods and services. As I said a minute ago, the two things need each other in order for people to be free and for freedom to flourish. We need a lot of business, a lot. That's the whole core of the situation. But we also need people to understand the importance of doing business, and that this is the true driver of development and history and wealth and well-being for everyone. So at Libertank, we do things all the time, every day. It's just a bunch of us, more or less young guys and girls, that we go out there every day and try to spread the good word, right? We opposed ferociously to a reformation of the civil code and the property rights regime in Colombia, which was silently being pushed by some bureaucrat vampires, if I'm allowed this word, or this harsh word, last year, and we weren't the only responsibles for this project to be killed before it even got to Congress. Many other schools and universities opposed it. We debated the authors and the people responsible for this reform on public television, on live television. We spread the word to Colombians who had no idea that there is such thing as a civil code or a property rights system, that it was being reformed and that it would affect them harshly and deeply. We have done many other things, like when labor and student unions paralyzed this country a few months ago with a vicious series of strikes and protests throughout the country. We managed to get 40,000 people to hit the streets peacefully and optimistically and cleanly to show the good face about businesses, about business. When others were blockading the roads, were breaking glasses, were setting bank offices on fire, we got 40,000 people out on the street to say, I'm grateful for my business because thanks to it, my kid went to college. Or thanks to the company I work for, I got to, I got to the beach for the first time in my life. Or I bought the car I always wanted, or I bought the house so my family can live in there. We hand out comic strips, very common, very simple comic strips in a very old-fashioned way out in the street, talking about the importance of markets, of prices, of why capitalism matters, of why printing money is not a good idea to solve poverty or to get people out of poverty. And we do this on a daily basis, and it's actually working, and it's astonishing. And now we come to the realization, or to the question, why was nobody doing this before us? Why? So far we seem to be the only ones out there, but my message, the message I want to convey is positive, it's good news. I want to tell you it's working. It works. Anyway, allow me to summarize all I've been saying, saying that although Antioquia is ripe for business and has always welcomed business for decades or perhaps centuries, it is also under an increasing threat of being shut down as a great place to invest, as a great place to express and to live and to enjoy freedom and liberty. So Libertank is on point to stop that from happening, but the task is great. And the enemies, the people who would see us shut down tomorrow, are many and are mighty, and they have many ways to shut us down. And there is just a bunch of us. So all I'm saying here tonight or today is that maybe, just maybe, the survival of institutions like Libertank might be aligned with the possible survival of your interests here in Antioquia and in Medellin. We have seen how the Latin American neighborhood has been falling or submitting to the populist rhetoric and mist. Colombia hasn't just yet, but Colombia is also the ultimate pride for this people. It is the crown jewel because, as some of you perhaps know, Colombia has refused to undergo or to suffer a harsh dictatorship, as most of Latin American countries have in the 20th century and the 21st century. So this is like the main target for these people right now. This is the crown jewel. So I am a Colombian myself, and of course I am interested in calling out for help. But I also want to say that maybe as a symbol, Colombia is a little stronghold of liberty, a little bastion of freedom. And maybe it is within our mutual interest to keep it free, to keep it open for business, right? So that's it. If anyone wants to comment, ask something, I'll be more than happy to answer your questions. And thank you for your time, and thank you for your attention, ladies and gentlemen.
Well, that was great. That was great to see your passion and what Libertank is doing. I mean, the fact of me being here today, I'm Colombian, I've been like 14 years abroad. I've seen what Libertank has been doing in the past couple of years, and one of the reasons for me being here is because of what Libertank has been done, like very aggressively online and like attacking with very simple words and to the general population to understand these principles. My question is, how did you come up with this? What was the original idea? How did you just sit down to decide, like, let's create a think tank, right? Like, how we can, from people around the world that is here, can also get inspired and ignite that, like, little fire of get a little of inspiration of how you got started with the organization.
Sure. Thank you for your question, and I'm very happy to hear that you are here because of Libertank. Like, wow, that makes me very, very excited and proud as well. All the members, all the staff at Libertank right now, we were all in politics a few years back. We were all part of political parties. We campaigned. We were on the road handing out flyers. We had great intentions. We thought, or at least I speak for myself, I thought that government and legislation and Congress and bureaucracy was the way forward, was the way to protect the individual and people's freedom. But each one of us left that world, left political careers or jobs, or we left that universe disappointed, each one of us for different reasons. But we were still hungry for change. We still wanted to make a stand for freedom and liberty, and we were just hungry. So we thought, and we discussed many times over, what can we do? What has not been done here in Colombia, right? Because in the US, of course, in Europe, think tanks are very common, and they're very strong, and they have been for decades. But in Colombia, there was nothing still like, we couldn't find anyone conveying this message, like markets matter, price system affects you, taxes affect you, not only economists at universities, not only super huge CEOs, it affects them as well, of course, but it affects everyone as well. So So we just went with it. And we say, well, let's start speaking to people. Let's start asking business owners, small business owners, medium business owners, family business owners, and ask them what they're thinking. And we realized that people were hungry, that people in Antioquia, they have the intuition about liberty, because we like to do business here, we're very industrious here. But there was no, say, theory, or there was nothing that could bind this together and express it in, let's say, an orderly fashion, or so to speak. So that's where we found our niche. And this is what propelled this project forward. And people are listening. People are reacting to it. So yeah, thank you for your question. Anyone else, maybe?
Yes, Jeff Singer from the United States. This is very exciting, and I'm really happy that you're doing this. I've heard you talk a lot about more like economic liberty and fiscal issues, which of course is very important in all of Latin America. Are you also getting into other issues that deal with liberty? For example, the drug war, which terribly impacts Latin America. It's so responsible for much of the instability in a lot of Latin America, or immigration issues, things like that. Are you getting into more foreign policy, or are you living into fiscal?
Yeah, thank you for your question as well. So yeah, part of our work at Libertank is to be watchdogs of the government, not of the sort that Professor Eric was talking about a few minutes ago, because we're private. We're 100% private, right? We do not belong to any political party. We don't take money from the state. We don't compete to get funding from the state in any regard. So part of what we do is to act as watchdogs of new regulations, of new public policies that might affect individual freedom. And the first conclusion we come to is that there is so much to do, and we're just we're 6 to 8 people at Libertank. There is just so much to do, and our resources are so scarce that we really have to prioritize. We have to set priorities and funnel or focus our energy and our short resources to some very limited fields. So, of course, we've thought about it, and we have a ton of projects on a waiting list. But right now, we're just sticking to the bare basics, which have not ever been circulated here before. It's astonishing how, well, you know how it works. You can get a copy of Marx's and Engels' writings in any language, at any library, at any cafe, at any part of the world. But nobody has ever heard of Bastiat. And he was right. Marx was wrong, but everyone knows about Marx. Nobody knows Bastiat. Nobody here has heard about Adam Smith. I mean, that's changing. So for now, we're sticking to the bare minimum. We want to do more. We want to talk about all these issues, such as migration, such as the drug war. And yes, just off the top of my head, the amount of money that the US government has poured into this country has always affected the national economy. So one just wonders, how would Colombian economy be right now if it wasn't for the US money, which has been poured here for decades, allocated only for the drug war. So yeah, I hope that addresses your question at least a little bit, and thank you. Somebody else?
I have another question, a little bit more specific. What you are considering currently the greatest legal threat, regulatory threat for future Colombia economic growth?
Yeah, if I have to say one right now, is the one I mentioned a few minutes ago. Thank you for that wonderful question. And there is some people, there is one law school in this country, one law school that follows a specific legal school and theory. These people really want to change the property rights regime in this country. The civil code. We have a French system here where everything's codified here, unlike the US perhaps, but I would say that there are some people, this elitist intellectuals on top of their ivory tower, that they want to dictate what people's best interests are. And they very subtly and inadvertently, they want to change the property rights regime here. And since these legal stuff seems and sounds very technical and very specialized, it creates barriers between the common Colombian citizen and the decision makers, right? And they know this, and they're taking advantage of this. So they just want to, they've been trying to reform the property rights system. So far, the effort of many law schools, think tanks, activists, also political leaders, business leaders, has managed to stop them, this project to reach Congress. But sooner or later, it's going to reach Congress, And that would be probably our last hope, that our elected politicians realize what they're dealing with there. So yeah, property rights system. Yeah. The gentleman?
Yeah, coming from Poland, we have no access to the mainstream media, so we use so-called internet televisions. It's very popular in Poland, so I have double question. Do you have internet televisions, or do you have access to mainstream media?
Yeah, I would say we have access to both. Of course, the access to these media and to internet and to Wi-Fi and to electricity even is quite an issue here in Colombia as well. Extremely unequal country. Not everyone has access to internet, but we do have access, broadly speaking, to mainstream media. Also, the national media is very powerful. We have like huge consolidated media conglomerates in newspapers and radio, and also in internet as well. And also there is the social media stuff. I don't need to tell you this, like that is where the real battleground is. So shout out to Salome, my fellow from Libertank as well. She's our head of the culture war front at Libertank, managing all the Twitter and Facebook and short, fast messages, which is where the real debate is being held right now. Do we have time for more?
Yeah, just a quick question. You said that we need to convince people that power to change things lies within them. How does Libertank suggest to find the kind of incentives that Dr. Eric described in his lecture that make it rational to support ever-increasing government?
Perfect. Thank you for that question, brother. Very broadly, we have to convince people, like really for the first time in Colombian history, that the state is not the answer, that government is not going to save them. We still haven't got a hold of that idea yet. Most of Colombians, it is ingrained in our system, in our thought complex system, that the solution lies within the government. So maybe we can change that switch that idea in their heads. Maybe that would be a start. Does that answer your question?
You're answering what? I'm asking how do you find the incentives that are already in place?
Well, Antioquia is an example of that. Antioquia enjoys, or this city enjoys, moderately better lifestyle and human development than the rest of the country. So maybe just by example, does that answer your question at least broadly? If you want, we can continue talking later. Do we have time for more, or is that it? Anyone else? The gentleman back there?
Drug addicts. That is a very different practice. As I said, arguing with a socialist about socialism is like arguing with a smoker about smoking. So, what do you think about that approach? Do you think maybe we need to, because it's like a movement and it seems happening, we need to try something else?
Yes, certainly. On the education front, we're strong supporters of private education, of the voucher system, of making companies fund and run their own schools for the families of their employees, and very broadly, very quickly, just to teach students how to think instead of what to think, right? This is not new, of course. This is not a very revolutionary idea. Well, still here, it is revolutionary here. Instead of making them memorize things and timetables and laws and the dates of our national history, is maybe teach them skills to be critical and teach them skills that answer to the market needs. So yeah, on that front, well, private education, of course. Maybe the voucher system will work. Maybe the concession system will work. It's a huge debate. But yeah, privatize and teach them skills. Teach students how to think instead of what to think. You have time for a last one, or are we done?
Yes.
Okay, I can stay here all afternoon, so you stop me when you're tired. Very well. Thank you, and please visit Libertine. Thank you.